The alien ship landed on the moon base with thunder that shook the dust off every building. The Jareth warriors walked out in full armor, tall and fierce, all of them women. Their leader, Commander Rixana, stood at the front, her arms crossed, her sharp silver eyes scanning the human crowd that had gathered to watch the joint training exercise. She smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who believed she had already won. "So these are your males?" she asked the human commander standing nearby. Her voice was full of amusement. "They look soft." The human commander said nothing. He knew this wouldn't end well, but the Earth government had agreed to this mock battle to show unity between species. The Jareth, however, saw it as a joke. They believed human men were weak and slow, unfit for real war. The aliens had defeated several other species across the stars and considered themselves the top warriors of the galaxy. The training arena was large and open, with smooth metal flooring and walls that could rise to form obstacles. The crowd gathered in the viewing stands, excited to watch. Cameras hovered in the air, broadcasting the event across colonies and planets. For the Jareth, this was just sport, a game. For the humans, it was turning into an insult. A group of human soldiers entered the arena. Most of them were nervous, their faces showed fear. They had seen the footage of the Jareth warriors fighting, and they knew they were no match in strength or speed. One by one, they were taken down, not even able to touch the alien women who moved like dancing blades. The crowd laughed, mostly the Jareth warriors. Rixana herself chuckled as the last human soldier fell to the floor, groaning. "Is that all?" she said, looking around. Then someone stepped forward. A man in simple black training clothes, no armor, no weapon, just calm eyes and a slow walk. His name was Daniel Reeve, but no one really knew him. He had transferred to the moon base just a month ago, and most people thought he was just another technician or maybe a low-level guard. Rixana raised an eyebrow. "And who is this one?" she asked, amused again. "Another lamb for the slaughter?" Daniel didn't respond. He didn't need to. His eyes were steady as he stepped into the center of the arena. Everyone fell silent, curious now. The human commander leaned forward, suddenly remembering a classified file he had once seen. Daniel's name had come up in a program called Echo Core. But that couldn't be true. Echo Core was shut down years ago. Too dangerous, too unstable. One of the Jareth warriors stepped forward, laughing. "I will handle this weakling," she said, spinning her staff. The match started with a loud beep. The alien woman rushed forward like lightning, her weapons spinning through the air. Daniel didn't move at first, he just watched. When the staff came close, he shifted just slightly, enough to make the blow miss by inches. Then he grabbed the staff, twisted and pulled. The alien warrior stumbled, shocked, before Daniel knocked her flat on the ground with one smooth motion. It had taken less than 5 seconds. The crowd gasped. Rixana stood still, her smile gone. The warrior on the ground was one of her top fighters. The camera zoomed in on Daniel, who stood in the same spot, breathing calmly. He hadn't even broken a sweat. Rixana's voice was colder now. "That was luck," she said. "Let's try again." Another warrior stepped in, larger, faster, her movements sharper. She tried to circle Daniel, using tricks and feints, but Daniel didn't fall for it. He moved like water, slipping past her strikes, tapping her joints, unbalancing her. Then, with a quiet sweep of his leg, she was on the floor too. No one was laughing anymore. Daniel looked at Rixana and finally spoke. "This isn't about pride," he said. "This is about understanding. What you've underestimated." Rixana clenched her jaw. She was no longer amused. She was curious and angry. This human was no ordinary soldier. He had moved like someone who had trained with death itself. Back in the crowd, the other human soldiers stared in awe. Some of the alien warriors looked uncertain now. They had laughed earlier, but now their faces showed doubt. Who was this man who had beaten their best fighters with such ease? The silence in the arena grew heavy. No one moved. The audience leaned in, waiting, wondering what would happen next. And Daniel, standing tall in the center, simply said, "Send your best." The challenge was clear. The fear had changed sides, and for the first time the alien warrior women did not laugh. They watched, they waited, and they wondered who, exactly, this human really was. The arena was still quiet after Daniel's unexpected victory. The Jareth warriors, once laughing and proud, now stared at the human man with careful eyes. No one expected him to defeat even one of them, but he had taken down two in front of everyone, with no weapons and almost no effort. Commander Rixana narrowed her eyes. Her pride was bruised. She had called this event a display of dominance, a joke. But now the joke was on them. She had to regain control. She turned to her second-in-command and said in a firm voice, "Bring." In Zelvira, gasps echoed across the arena when the name was spoken. Zelvira was one of the most feared warriors in the Jareth Empire. She wasn't just strong. She was a mind fighter, someone who could use mental attacks along with physical strikes. Humans had never faced someone like her in public combat. As the tall, blue-skinned alien walked into the ring, the temperature seemed to change. Her eyes glowed faintly and her fingers moved slowly in the air as if pulling invisible threads. Daniel watched her without fear, but his muscles were tense. He knew this wasn't going to be like the last fight. Zelvira didn't speak. She simply tilted her head and sent a wave of pressure toward Daniel. It wasn't something others could see, but Daniel felt it. An invisible weight pressing down on his thoughts, memories flashing in his mind, pain, loss, confusion. He staggered slightly, but he didn't fall. The alien warrior smirked, thinking she had found his weakness. She stepped forward with long strides, swinging a blade with deadly speed, but Daniel ducked, barely avoiding the slice, and rolled backward to make space. Inside his mind, the mental attacks continued. Zelvira whispered into his thoughts, sending images meant to frighten him. His worst failures, faces of people he couldn't save, screams from the past. But Daniel closed his eyes for a second, focused his breath, and did something no one expected. He spoke softly, but with a calm voice. "I forgive myself." The pressure in his mind cracked like glass. The mental attack broke. Zelvira's eyes widened. She tried again, stronger this time, but it didn't work. Daniel walked toward her step by step, his face steady. "You think pain controls us," he said, "but pain made me stronger." She raised her blade again, but Daniel caught her wrist before it could move. He didn't strike back with a fist. Instead, he leaned in and whispered something into her ear. No one heard what he said, but whatever it was, it changed her. Zelvira's hand shook. Her eyes lost their glow. She stepped back slowly, then turned, and dropped her weapon on the ground. The entire arena gasped. Even Rixana stood frozen. A Jareth warrior had surrendered. Not from wounds, not from fear of death, but because of words. Daniel turned around and walked back to the center of the ring. He looked at the alien crowd, many of whom stared at him with confused expressions. He wasn't just strong. He was strange to them, unpredictable. Rixana was no longer smiling. She walked down from her high platform and approached the edge of the ring. "What did you say to her?" she demanded. Daniel glanced at her. "Something only a human could understand," he replied. That answer only made her angrier. She didn't like mysteries, especially ones that made her warriors look weak. She pointed at him. "You are not special," she said. "You are a trick, a shadow. You cannot win forever." Daniel nodded. "I don't need to win forever," he said. "Just long enough for you to stop laughing." Those words hit harder than any punch. The audience, both alien and human, went completely quiet again. A message was spreading across live feeds, screens, and minds. Humanity was not as weak as they thought, especially not this human backstage. Some Jareth warriors began whispering to each other. They didn't understand how one man could bring such chaos, but they felt something changing. The fear was no longer only with the humans. The human soldiers who had failed earlier stood taller now. They looked at Daniel with new respect. Some even smiled, proud that one of their own had made such an impact. In her private tent later, Zelvira sat silently, still thinking about what Daniel had whispered. It was something that shook her deeply, something that reminded her of emotions she had buried long ago. She couldn't understand why, but she didn't hate him. She feared him and respected him. Back in the arena, Rixana clenched her fists behind her back. She was losing control of the narrative. Her warriors were confused, her people were shaken, and the human she once mocked was standing firm in front of them all, unshaken, unreadable. She whispered to herself, "What kind of man is he?" But Daniel heard her, and with a slight smile, he answered without turning, "A human one." And once again, the Jareth had no words, only silence, as they realized the war they thought was won might only just be beginning. After Zelvira walked out of the arena, everything changed. The Jareth warriors were no longer laughing. Their proud faces now showed something they hadn't felt in a long time: uncertainty. They had mocked human males for being soft, for being emotional, but now one man stood alone and had defeated 3 of their best, without anger, without fear. Commander Rixana didn't like it. She stood at the edge of the arena, watching Daniel with sharp eyes. Her mind raced with thoughts. Something about him didn't make sense. He was calm, too calm. His movements were too perfect. He wasn't just trained, he was something else. She turned to one of her officers and ordered, "Scan his body. Make sure he's not using any hidden tech." The officer obeyed. Small drones flew out and circled Daniel, scanning every inch of his body. The results came back in seconds. No weapons, no implants, no tech of any kind. "He's clean," the officer said quietly. Rixana gritted her teeth. Then who taught him to fight like that? Back on Earth, in the deep files of the military, there was one answer. Daniel Reeve had once been part of a secret human project called Echo Core. The goal was to create soldiers who could survive alien wars, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But the project was too brutal, too dangerous. Most of the test subjects didn't survive. The few who did became ghosts. Daniel was one of them, but none of the Jareth knew this. To them he was still a mystery, a puzzle they couldn't solve, and Rixana hated puzzles. She decided to send in 3 warriors at once. She didn't want a slow fight. Anymore, she wanted him broken, beaten in front of everyone. She raised her hand and 3 tall warriors stepped into the ring. They were strong, fast, and ruthless. They moved as one, trained to fight together as a deadly team. The crowd leaned forward, waiting. This would be different. Daniel couldn't handle 3 at once, right? The signal rang, and the 3 warriors charged. One came from the left, the second from the right, and the third leaped from above. It was a perfect attack, no escape in sight. But Daniel didn't panic. He spun low, ducked under the leaping warrior, and used her own momentum to throw her into the second one. They both crashed into each other and fell. He then blocked the first warrior's punch, twisted her arm, and sent her sliding across the floor. The fight looked like a dance. Daniel moved smoothly, not wasting energy, not showing emotion. He was focused like a machine, but still human. And that's what made it strange. He wasn't trying to hurt them, only stop them. The 3 warriors rose again and attacked harder, now angry, but Daniel kept his calm. He avoided their blows, blocked their strikes, and disarmed them one by one. His hands moved fast, his eyes sharp, and within a few minutes, all 3 were on the ground, groaning, unable to continue. The arena went silent again. No one could believe what they had seen. This was not possible. A single man had taken down 3 elite warriors from a species known for destroying planets. Daniel stood in the center of the ring, breathing calmly. His face didn't show pride. He wasn't smiling. He just looked around, then stepped back as if the fight meant nothing to him. Rixana stepped forward, her voice cold. "Why didn't you kill them?" she asked. Daniel looked at her and replied, "Because I didn't have to." The answer shocked many of the alien warriors. In their world, battles ended with death or surrender. Mercy was weakness. But here was a man showing mercy, and still winning. Some of the younger alien soldiers started whispering, "He could have ended them all." One said, "But he let them live. He's not like us." Another whispered, "He's stronger, but also kinder." Rixana heard the whispers and felt anger grow in her chest. Her people were beginning to admire him, and that was dangerous, very dangerous. She turned and walked away without a word, but her silence spoke louder than anything else. She was shaken, for the first time in her life. Backstage, the defeated warriors sat in silence. Their injuries were not bad, but their pride was broken. One of them, a tall warrior with red markings, looked up and said, "I don't understand. He had every chance to destroy us." Another one replied, "He didn't come here to destroy us. He came to teach us something." Innocent. The crowd, the humans watching, cheered. They were finally proud, finally respected. One of their own had done the impossible. Daniel walked out of the arena quietly, not waving, not speaking, but in every mind, one question remained. How could one human man bring an empire of warriors to silence? And deep down, even Roxana now feared the answer, because this human didn't fight like them. He fought with something more powerful than fists. He fought with purpose, and that made him unstoppable. That night, Roxana sat alone in her command tent, her fists clenched on the cold metal table. She replayed the scenes again and again in her mind. Daniel defeating her warriors with ease. His movements, his calm face, his soft words, all of it made her feel something she hated. Not fear, but confusion, and that was worse. She pulled up his file again. The humans had shared basic info, name, age, rank. But there was nothing useful. Nothing explained his skill, his speed, his control. This isn't a normal soldier, she whispered to herself. He's something else. She called in her top tech officer and ordered a deep search into human military programs. It didn't take long before a forbidden name popped up. Echo Corps, a Black Ops project that had been erased from most records. Only rumors remained. Soldiers trained in pain, silence, and survival. Soldiers who were built to fight aliens, physically and mentally. Daniel Reeve was one of them. A survivor of a program that broke most men. That's why he didn't flinch, why he didn't brag, why he didn't kill. Because he had already faced worse and walked away. Roxana closed the screen and stood. Her pride had taken enough damage. If she wanted to regain control, she had to do it herself. No more sending warriors. No more games. She would fight him, at dawn. A message echoed through the moon-base arena. Commander Roxana challenges the human Daniel Reeve to single combat. It wasn't a request. It was a declaration. Crowds gathered faster than ever before. Aliens and humans alike filled every seat. Cameras floated above the arena, broadcasting to planets far and wide. Everyone knew this wouldn't be like the others. This was the queen of the warrior race, facing the man who had made her army look small. Daniel walked into the arena calmly. As always, no armor, no weapon, just the same black clothes. Roxana entered from the other side, her armor shining like gold, her steps heavy with power. The two stood face to face in the center, staring into each other's eyes. Ready to see what a real warrior feels like, Roxana said coldly. I'm not here to feel anything, Daniel replied. I'm here to end this. The signal rang. The duel began. Roxana moved fast, faster than anyone before her. Her punches were strong, her kicks sharp. She was trained. For centuries, her muscles like stone, but Daniel moved smoother. He didn't block with force, he redirected. Every strike she threw, he twisted away or softened with a step. His style wasn't about power, it was about flow. Still, Roxana was stronger. She forced Daniel backward with each attack, but he didn't fall, didn't panic. His eyes studied. Her learning her rhythm, she kicked, he spun away, she punched, he ducked under. Every move she made, he adjusted, always 1 second ahead. The fight continued for minutes, both warriors breathing hard. Roxana finally landed a blow. Her elbow hit Daniel's jaw. He stumbled slightly, the first time he had been touched in the arena. The crowd gasped. But Daniel smiled. Just a little. Good, he whispered. Now we're really fighting. He moved in with new energy, faster now, not avoiding, engaging. He blocked her strikes, countered with palm hits to her ribs, knees, shoulders. He never aimed to hurt her badly, just enough to wear her down. Roxana felt her strength dropping. Her breath came shorter. Her arms ached. Her pride told her to keep going. But her body was slowing. Daniel, on the other hand, looked calm, as if he could go on forever. She launched one last desperate attack, A full spin with her blade arm extended. Daniel ducked, came in close, and swept her legs. She fell, hard, onto the floor. Her weapon slid across the ring, and she looked up at Daniel standing above her. The crowd waited, breath held. Was this the end? Daniel didn't strike. He didn't lift his foot or raise a fist. Instead, he held out his hand, offering to help her up. Roxana stared at him, confused, angry, defeated. Why? She asked. Why don't you finish it? Because winning doesn't mean destroying you, Daniel said. It means showing you something stronger than fear. Roxana blinked. Her heart raced in her chest. She had expected pain, humiliation, even death. But mercy from a human. Slowly she reached up and took his hand. He pulled her to her feet gently. Their eyes met again, but this time something was different. There was no hate between them. She looked around the silent arena, then back at Daniel, and in front of all her warriors she nodded, not as a loser, but as a leader. You fight like no one I've ever known, she said softly. Daniel replied, That's because I fight for something bigger than pride. For the first time, Roxana didn't feel like laughing at a human. She felt like learning from one, and across the galaxy, millions watched in awe as a queen of war and a soldier of peace stood side by side, not as enemies, but as something new, something stronger than either of them alone. After the duel, the whole moon base felt different. The Jareth warriors were no longer loud, no longer mocking. They had seen their strongest leader, Roxana, fall to a human and accept his hand instead of fighting to the end. That moment had broken something inside them, but it had also started something new. Some of the alien warriors were confused, others were angry, but a few looked thoughtful, as if they were beginning to question everything they had been taught about humans. Back in her chamber, Roxana sat in silence. Her armor was off, her body was sore, her pride was wounded. But her mind was full of questions. She remembered Daniel's words clearly. I fight for something bigger than pride. She couldn't stop thinking about it. One of her top officers entered the room, her face tense. Commander, the War Council has sent a message. Roxana looked up slowly. And what do they say? They are displeased, the officer said carefully. They say you've embarrassed the Empire, that showing respect to a human in front of the galaxy was weakness. They want a response. Soon. Roxana stood, her face calm. Let them wait, she said. They don't understand what I saw in that man. But things were already moving behind her back. Far away, in the black halls of the Jareth War Council, some of the elders were furious. They believed Roxana had gone soft and worse. They feared the change spreading among the younger warriors. If they started seeing humans as equals, the old way of power and control would fall apart. A secret order was given. Remove the human, and if necessary, remove Roxana too. Late at night, while most of the base was asleep, 3 shadows slipped. Through the halls they wore black armor and no symbols, silent and trained for one task. They were assassins, sent not just to kill, but to erase. Daniel was in his room, meditating. He felt something shift in the air before he heard anything. He opened his eyes slowly, then stood and walked to the center of the room. The door burst open, and the 3 assassins entered without a word. Their blades gleamed under the low lights. Daniel didn't run, didn't shout. He just looked at them and waited. One of the assassins moved first, fast and sharp. Daniel ducked and grabbed the attacker's arm, twisting it hard and using his own force to send him crashing into the wall. The second assassin came from behind, but Daniel dropped low and kicked, his legs out. Then the third came forward. But before Daniel could react, a red energy blade flew through the air and knocked the assassin's weapon aside. Roxana stood in the doorway, her chest rising with heavy breath. Her left arm was already burned, blood dripping from her sleeve. She had followed the assassins and arrived just in time. She leapt into the fight, her blade cutting through the air with fury. Not for glory, but for protection. Together she and Daniel fought side by side, their movements different but somehow in harmony. He was silent, smooth, and precise. She was powerful, fast, and wild. Within minutes, all 3 assassins were down, 1 unconscious, 2 disabled. Daniel looked at Roxana, surprised. You followed them? She nodded, breathing hard. They were not sent by me, she said. They came from the War Council. You were the target. But if they had succeeded, I would have been next. Daniel stepped closer and held her arm, checking her wound. She winced, but didn't pull away. Why did you save me? He asked. You didn't have to. Roxana looked at him, her voice softer than ever. Because you saved me first, she whispered. Not with your hands, but with your mercy, with your words. There was a long pause between them, and, in that silence, something deep passed through their eyes. Not romance, not friendship, but understanding. Something old and strong, like respect between warriors who had shared battle. Daniel wrapped her arm in a bandage from his kit and said, quietly, this alliance is already making them afraid. Yes, Roxana agreed, because they fear what they don't control, and they don't control this. The next day, the War Council sent another message demanding an explanation for the failed assassination and for Roxana's actions. But this time, Roxana sent a reply of her own, clear and simple. If you want war with humans, come face us yourself. But know this, I stand with the human. That message shook the Empire. For the first time, a powerful commander had chosen unity over pride, and her people, many of them didn't hate it. Some even cheered quietly in the shadows. Daniel stood beside Roxana as she sent the message. That was bold, he said with a half-smile. It was necessary, she replied. I am not afraid to fight, but I will no longer fight for old lies. And with that, a new fire was lit. Not one of war, but of change. A change that began not with a battle, but with one man who didn't strike the final blow, and one woman who chose to stand beside him, even if it meant defying her own people. The day after Roxana's bold message to the War Council, the moon base felt tense. Some Jareth warriors still followed her, their loyalty strong, but others whispered behind her back. They said she had lost her honor, that she had bent her knee to a human. Daniel could feel the change in the air. People looked at him differently, some with respect, some with quiet hate. He wasn't afraid, but he was cautious. He knew something was coming, something bigger than just words. Roxana walked with him through the base, her injured arm still healing under the bandages he had wrapped. The looks they got didn't bother her, but even she knew that her power was slipping. She had chosen peace, chosen Daniel, and now she would have to defend that choice. They entered the war room, where her highest-ranking officers were waiting. The room was dark, filled with glowing maps and silent screens. The officers stood straight, their eyes cold. One of them, General Zier, stepped forward. We received another message from the War Council, he said sharply. They're sending a representative, someone who will take command if they find you unfit. They want to remove me, Roxana said quietly. Yes, Zier replied, and they will not come alone. They bring soldiers loyal only to the old ways. Daniel spoke, for the first time. And if they try to take her by force? Zier looked at him with narrowed eyes. Then we will see who still believes in her. Roxana turned to her officers. I will not surrender, not to them, not to their fear, she said. But I will not start a war. If they want to attack me, they'll have to do it in the open. That night, the ship from the War Council arrived. It was dark and silent, shaped like a claw. 5 warriors in silver armor walked out, leading a tall figure covered in a black robe. His name was Arath. Vex, an elder warrior, once Roxana's mentor, now her enemy. He entered the base like he owned it, walking straight into her command hall without asking. Roxana stood waiting, her face calm but her eyes burning. Daniel stood beside her, silent and alert. Arath looked at her with disappointment. You were once the strongest among us, he said slowly. Now you kneel to humans and send soft messages to the council? I didn't kneel, Roxana replied. I stood beside someone stronger than you. His eyes flicked to Daniel, then back to her. You think he's strong? He's a shadow, a trick. We should crush them, not walk with them. Daniel stepped forward. You're afraid of what I represent, he said. Not because I'm dangerous, but because I'm different. Arath sneered. You don't belong. In our ranks, human. You confuse our warriors, you poison their minds with weakness. Rixana raised her chin. Then let them decide, she said. Let the warriors choose, follow you, or follow me. Arath laughed, but it wasn't joyful. Fine, let them choose, but know this. If they stand with you, they'll fight beside you. If they stand with me, they'll crush you both. The next morning, the entire moon base gathered in the training arena, not for battle, but for a choice. Arath and Rixana stood on opposite sides. Daniel stood with Rixana, silent, watching one by one. The warriors stepped forward. Some walked to Arath, faces hard, loyal to the old ways. But then something surprising happened. Many of them walked to Rixana, slowly but surely. Even warriors who had once laughed at Daniel now stood beside him, beside her. The split was clear, almost even. The base was now 2 armies on 1 floor. Arath's face darkened. Then we settle this now, he growled. Trial by combat, you and me, Rixana. Winner commands all. Rixana looked at Daniel, who gave her a small nod. She turned to Arath. Agreed. The duel began fast. Arath was strong, faster than she remembered. His strikes were brutal, fueled by hate. Rixana defended with all her might. Every blow felt like thunder. Her injured arm burned with pain. But she didn't fall. She struck back, aiming at his legs, his sides, trying to wear him down. But he was like iron. Daniel watched closely. Every movement, every mistake. And then he saw it. Arath's right shoulder was slower. From an old injury, Rixana needed to strike there. He called out, right side, lower angle. Rixana moved with new speed, ducked under a blade, and drove her elbow into Arath's weak spot. He staggered, and she swept his legs, sending him to the ground. Her blade hovered at his throat, but she didn't strike. Yield. She said, I won't kill you. Arath's eyes burned, but he said nothing. He turned his face away, defeated. Rixana lowered her blade, then turned to the crowd. I am still your commander, she said. But this time, not with force, but with purpose. And the warriors cheered. Daniel stood beside her as the sound echoed through the arena. Rixana looked at him. Blood on her face, sweat in her eyes, but a real smile on her lips. You gave me more than help, she said quietly. You gave me hope. And Daniel, the human who stood alone once, now stood beside an army that no longer laughed, but followed, with respect. The war was over before it truly began. Rixana had won the duel, not just with her blade, but with her heart. She had shown her warriors that true strength was not in cruelty or fear, but in honor. She had chosen not to kill Arath, and that choice became her greatest victory. The base was quiet now, but not in a bad way. It was peaceful, calm, something the Jareth were not used to. The warriors no longer stared at Daniel with hate or doubt. Many of them nodded at him as he passed. Some even asked to train with him. He was no longer the outsider. He was something more. Daniel stood in the training arena, watching 2 alien warriors spar. Their moves were fast, but not violent. They were learning control, learning balance. Rixana stepped beside him, her arms crossed but relaxed. They're changing, she said softly. And it started because of you. Daniel shook his head. It started because of you. You had the power to break or build, and you chose to build. She looked at him, her eyes softer than before. I didn't know how until I met you. But peace, even when earned, is never safe. Far from the moon base on the main planet of Jareth, the War Council watched all the reports with growing worry. They had seen the duel, the unity, the cheers for Rixana and a human, and they were not pleased. One elder slammed his fist on the table. She has turned warriors into students, he growled. She has allowed a human to poison our pride. Another elder said, we must act before others follow her example. They sent a message to all commanders still loyal to the old ways. A fleet of warships was prepared, their purpose simple, to erase Rixana and the human and take back control by force. Back on the moon base, sensors picked up the incoming ships. Panic spread quickly. The warriors knew what this meant. This wasn't a small fight, this was an invasion. Rixana called an emergency meeting in the command hall. Everyone gathered: Jareth, humans, tech crews, and junior officers. The screen showed the approaching fleet. Black ships with red markings, a sign of no mercy. "They're coming to wipe us out," one officer said. "Even if we surrender, they won't let us live." Daniel stepped forward, calm but serious. "Then we don't run, we show them that fear no longer works here." Rixana nodded. "They expect us to kneel, but we stand." The base prepared quickly. Human engineers worked side by side with alien warriors, building defenses, setting up traps. Everyone was busy, but no one complained. For the first time, two different species were working together. Not because they had to, but because they believed in each other. Night fell, and the stars above glowed quietly. Daniel sat on the roof of the command center looking up. Rixana joined him, sitting beside him without a word. After a long silence, she asked, "Do you think we can win?" Daniel looked at her, then at the stars. "We already did," he said. "They just don't know it yet." The next morning, the sky burned. The enemy fleet arrived in a storm of fire and shadow. Their weapons powered, their troops ready. Rixana stood at the front gate in full armor, her warriors behind her. Daniel stood beside her, holding nothing but his voice. A message came from the lead ship, cold and sharp. "Rixana of Jareth, stand down, surrender the human, and you may live." She didn't blink. "I stand with him. If you want him, you'll have to face all of us." The ships landed, and black armored soldiers poured out. The first wave ran toward the gate, only to be stopped by a shock field, set by human tech. Then energy nets launched from the walls, disabling many more. The rest of the soldiers came harder, faster, and the real battle began. Daniel fought alongside the Jareth like he was one of them. He didn't carry big weapons, just a staff and his speed. He used the enemy's force against them, flipping, dodging, and striking with perfect aim. Rixana was like a storm, leading with fire and fury. She took down 5 at once, her blade dancing with control and power. The defenders didn't back down, they held the line, they protected each other, human and alien side by side. Hours passed, the sun rose high, and finally, the enemy started retreating. Their leader sent one last message, his voice filled with shock. "This base should have fallen in minutes." Daniel answered him. "You fought warriors, we fought as one." The enemy left, beaten not just by strength, but by unity. Cheers echoed across the base. Wounded were carried. Victory songs began. Rixana stood at the center, her armor scratched and stained, but her eyes full of fire. She turned to Daniel, who was helping a young soldier walk. "We did it," she said, voice full of pride. He smiled, tired but strong. "You led them." She shook her head. "No. You reminded them who they could be." And as the base lit up with light and hope, the legend of the human and the warrior queen began to spread, not just across the moon, but through the stars. A story of one man who faced laughter and hate, and turned it into strength and peace. And beside him, a warrior who once laughed at humans now fought for them, with them, and because of them forever.